and welcome to Our People, the podcast where we give space for Holdeman Stories. We focus on hope, healing, and inspiration. Connection, consciousness, and love are the driving motivations for this project. Remember to have grace for those who have chosen to speak out and share their experience. Please enjoy the story you will hear today. Welcome to Our People, the place where we give space for Holdeman Stories. I'm Waylon. I'm here today with Amanda, and we are talking to Jules. Jules, would you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Jules. Well, I would have been Penner, but I live with my partner now, and so I go by Thiessen. Live in Winkler, Manitoba.
So, how old are you?
25.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how long ago did you leave the church? Or were you ever a member?
I was, yes.
Okay.
I officially, I guess, told the pastor of my parents' church that I wanted to leave when I was 21, but that had been a process. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I had been planning to leave since I was 17.
Wow.
And yeah,
How old were you when you joined?
16.
Okay. Wow.
Didn't take
A
very
year
long
and you
then.
were planning to leave.
Yeah. Didn't take long to kind of be over it.
But did you grow up in it? Like your parents were?
Yes. Yeah, was raised in it. I was adopted, but that was like a year and a half, so I don't remember anything else. But we like I was raised in like Steinbach area. I don't know if you guys know where that is. It's just in Manitoba. It's actually about an hour and a half from where I live now. And and in at when I was like seven or eight, actually we spent a summer in Ontario. And then when I was like 11 or 12, that's when we moved to Ontario. We kind of spent that summer there just to see if we like enjoyed it. And then I guess we did, because then we moved there. And then lived there till I was 21. And then came back here. I came back here.
Okay, so what do you do? Do you have a job? What do you do now?
I actually do. I just have a factory job and yeah, model on the side.
I've seen
That's
some of your
obviously
stuff. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
You just finished school too, didn't you?
I did, yes. I graduated last year.
Yeah.
Yep, 90% average.
Wow.
I'm very proud of. Yep.
What was your degree in?
I just finished my high school
Okay, very good.
just because of the whole like dropping out scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely plan to do some post-secondary, but for now I'm just gonna work and save up money for that because I'd prefer to go into debt as little as possible.
That's the smartest way to do it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, just work right now, actually, the same place as my partner works.
What kind of what industry?
It's what would you call it? Do you know like what powder coating is?
Yep.
Yep, that's what I do.
Cool. I
Yeah.
work in a welding shop, so I would definitely know what powder coating is.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I do for now. Pretty
What?
enjoyable. I used to work in social services, but I quit that. And in my first job, or not my first job, but before social services, I worked at Domino's Pizza. That was the first job outside of the church.
What part of the process do you do? Or are you
For
in the
powder coating?
office, or do you do? Yeah.
I do the preparation for parts. So
Okay.
to get powder coated. I was
Yep.
gonna do the powder coating, like I was gonna work in the paint booth, but you have to wear like a respirator for that, and because of my glasses, it didn't fit on me. And I told the boss, I was just like, you know what? Just move me to prep. I enjoy it more anyways.
Yeah. That's all
Yeah.
sprayed, like blown on, right? Like
Yeah, it's like this.
a gun that you.
Yeah. It's like
Yep.
this powder.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
It's
it's
just, yeah, it's,
attracted to the part and sticks to it and then gets baked
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They actually
Yeah.
like hook up a thing that looks like a jumper cable for your car onto the parts so that
Mhm.
it, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
it's actually charges. I don't know which way around. One of the way around. One, either the part is charged and the powder is the negative, and so it's attracted, or else it's the other way around. The part is like the
I,
negative side, and the powder is charged, and it just pulls it right onto the part. Yeah,
yeah,
that's so
I
cool.
think, yeah, it's really, yeah, I guess it's like easier than spray painting the parts because then there's not like drips of paint, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
Yeah, what I do is just, it's just basically I make sure there's nothing coming between the part and the powder. So if there's just like any little bits of rust that the blasters missed, um, or just if there's like the part has been sitting on a pallet and there's a little bit of paint, just go over
Sure.
it with a sanding block. It's very like low key. If there's any like big scratches or anything in the part, I don't have to fix that. It's just make sure that it's clean, not that it's, not without flaws or anything. If there's issues with if there's parts that haven't been blasted, then I go tell my partner after work because that's what he does.
Make him do it.
Yeah. I like to
Yep.
say I spend the day at work cleaning up his messes and then he comes home and has to help me with mine. So
Yep.
like he's seen my makeup room after I'm done with it.
So you said you left at 17. Well, I'm curious what your thinking was.
No, she mentally left at 17, but I'm curious also what
Started
you're
leaving,
thinking.
right?
This is obviously gonna preface this by saying that there's, I guess, a trigger warning because I will talk about abuse and stuff of that sort. And, you know, I'm not here to be a victim because the real victims, they're still in that church. Because I got
Hmm.
out of that shit. And I'm not here to get pity because at the end of the day, I'm more than the bad things that have happened to me. But I was abused by my stepbrother from the ages of 8 to 16 every single day. And I thought by joining the church it would protect me from that abuse until I could, and I knew kind of upon joining it was more of a just kind of like if you can't beat them, join them thing. And it was never my intent to stay in the long term. It was just kind of about like, oh, is this if this will protect me until I can, get out of that. And
Hmm.
I did it as a way to be accepted because obviously, I don't know how, even like it's changed since then in the church that I went to. But in the when I was younger, you weren't allowed to go to some of the youth functions and stuff if you weren't a member. And obviously, I wanted that acceptance, right? So that was also a huge motivator, which I don't believe should should not factor into it because I think that is pressuring people to join. I don't think people can be given consent to make this decision to join that they're supposed to be for the rest of their lives. When that consent is clearly made under the duress of, oh well, if you join then you can be included. And I do, attribute, the abusive background to, wanting that acceptance, you know, and not having a proper sense of self-esteem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think kind of I don't know what you would call it, the whole like the maybe like catalyst to me leaving was I had so my grandparents, a bit of a backstory, my grandparents, they got kicked out, and some of my uncles and aunts never joined and some of them did. And we had some of the uncles and aunts over from that. We had some of the uncles and aunts over from that had never joined one time. We had them over for night, and they have two kids that I'm close to, and one of those kids had actually come over for a bit previously, and we had never really, delved into anything in particular. But I did like always like look up to those guys, and I had been, I guess, questioning my sexuality for quite a while, like since very young. And that night when my cousin, like my family, my uncles and aunts were over, me and my cousin spent the night together, obviously, and we're talking. And I guess I came out to my parents shortly after that. And that was just kind of the, like the moment of like, this isn't the place for me type of thing,
With the things with your stepbrother, was that known by authorities, figures, church, parents?
Oh, I am, this is a, like, obviously this spanned over many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So when we moved, or when we lived in Ontario for the summer, we lived across from a family that my parents were friends with, I guess, another church family, and they had 3 daughters. And it seemed like after that, after we came back that summer, it was like he hung out a lot with the oldest daughter of that family, who was his age. And after he was like a year older than me. And after that, like it was like he knew the difference between like what men and women were. And um yeah, I remember like expressing, it was very, very known, like that I wasn't okay with when he started, abusing me. Um, because it started out as just a lot of his abuse wasn't even necessarily overtly sexual, but it was, he would just like touch my arm or my shoulder and things like that, that like if you would see a man doing it to a lady, you would be like, you know like you would, I mean, I talked to my partner about this too, and he was like, well, the Holdemen sexualize a couple holding hands, but yet, you know they didn't realize what he was like, they didn't realize what my stepbrother was doing. Like, no, that it was just kind of, it didn't start as anything too like overt, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just like he obviously, it was done with, like he would walk by and he would like rub my arm or my leg or something like that, and it was obvious he knew. It was obvious he was, I mean, he's 8 years old, but who knows, he's a little sicko, because yeah, obviously it was obvious he was doing it to get off in some way, because if he wasn't doing it for to be a disgusting little perv, well, why wasn't he doing it to other boys? You know, why wasn't he doing it to my dad? Um, and like there was a lot of um lots of mental abuse, constantly being put down, constantly being bullied. Um, when when we moved to Ontario, it was a very small school, like 12 kids at the most, and like he just turned all of them against me. Um, a lot of bullying, like at school and at home, and like lots and lots of inappropriate touching every single day, multiple times a day. And I counted up the times he, laid hands on me in 8 years, and it was probably like 15,000 times was, I think, the number I came up with. I know I expressed discomfort with it because I remember one time when I was like really, like maybe like 9 or 10, we were like in the back seat of my parents' car driving home, and like he was like grabbing me, right? And I think I just said, like, bugger off. I'm not like your personal prostitute here. Like, you can't do that to me. So like obviously I made it established that it was not okay, And like regardless of his intents or his motives for doing that to me, what matters not is what he was intending. It was the fact that I was, uncomfy with it, right? And as he got older, it just got more and more disgusting. Like by the time we moved to Ontario at about the age of 12, I would like, I would like be in my bedroom and I would put like a table in front of my door, and like I would have like a lock or like just one of those like just like a hook that goes into a loop on the door frame, and like he would just like break that down and shove the table over just to like grope me. And like I would be like in my bedroom sleeping, like maybe I wouldn't have pants on, like I'd be napping, and he would come in and just rip the blanket off and start like grabbing at me. And I know that like sorry, what was I gonna say? Like obviously, like I say, um obviously it was sexual. Like maybe even if he wasn't, it doesn't matter where he touched me. It's like if it wasn't sexual and he wasn't doing it to be a little pervert, why wasn't he doing it to other boys? I mean, maybe he was. Obviously, I was the most accessible because I was like in the home, right? And it was also just constant, mental abuse too. Um, there was a girl like I was in the same grade as, and like he would just like, I remember like my parents would have school board meetings, and so me and him would be like, we just like hung out at school. We'd be alone outside, and he would just force me to admit over and over again the things that, like, he would be like, her name, he would be like, hey, he would be asking me like over and over again, like, hey, is this girl, better at this than you? Is she better at that than you? And I would have to just admit, like, yes, she is. Yes, she is. And if I said, no, she's not, then he would just be like, you're lying, she is. It was just constant, like just over. And I remember it went on for like 2 hours one time, him just forcing me to admit over and over again that I wasn't as good. And just like just shit like that every single day from 8 years old to 16. Obvious and only intensifying, like as I got older. Yeah. And like people knew. Like I one time we were gonna have company. We just got home from church. And most of the time, my coping mechanism, I learned pretty early on that if he tried to provoke me, I shouldn't do it back. Like I just tried to be invisible. Because there was no way I would ever win, like he's stronger than me. I remember one time I teased him a little bit. I was probably about like 15, 16, and he kind of threatened me, and I fired back at him, and he like grabbed me by the throat and like shoved me up against the kitchen counter and was like choking me out till the point of fainting. And like just like choking me. And he finally let go. And the company came over immediately after that. And I was like crying and I couldn't talk because he had obviously squished the bejesus out of my Adam's apple. And obviously something was wrong. My neck was probably pretty red too. And like never got asked anything. Company never asked, to my knowledge, if I was okay. When I was clearly not. Like, just like it was so, but obviously everybody has their perspective, right? Like for me, it was like I was living this every single day, right? And like obviously it was very evident to me how wrong it was because I was, experiencing it, but I guess people just were ignorant. It's hard to believe that they can sexualize, so many other tiny things, like I have a conversation with I'd have a conversation with a guy and they'd immediately think I was trying to jump in his pants. But then yet this type of thing, it was just like, oh, we didn't know it was sexual, I talked to a therapist about it. A therapist that my parents had talked to. I actually just recently messaged her and asked how much she knew of what was going on. And she said that allegedly people just didn't realize they didn't know it was. I guess they just were. I guess a lot of people just claimed ignorance and didn't realize it was what it was. But I feel at the end of the day, regardless if it was sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, regardless of what his motives were behind it, I was clearly uncomfortable with it now. That's what should have mattered. My discomfort, not trying to figure out why he did it and if he was really not meaning any bad by it. I did and yeah, I mean obviously I was, and it messed with my mental health, right? Like extremely much, because he was always comparing me to everyone else and forcing me to admit that I wasn't as good as people. And like I would come home from school and just, I'd come home from school and just lie on the floor till bedtime because I couldn't be arsed to move because I felt like such shit. And he would come in from outside and like see me lying on the floor and kick me and laugh at me and just be like, what's your issue? Like, yeah. And the reason this all ended, I guess, how it ended, and that was, partly my motivation to joining the church, was thinking that by joining the church, it would somehow protect me from this.
Mm-hmm.
But how it ended was, basically, I went to my friend's place for night and I told her like everything what happened. And she told her mom what was up, or what I had told her. Her mom asked me, I reaffirmed it with her mom. Her mom, my friend's mom, my friend's grandfather was the pastor of the church. And I guess my friend's mom told the pastor of the church. And basically, all I ever heard was, well, he didn't rape you, so we don't have to press charges. We don't have to take it to the police because he never stuck his fingers or his dick inside of you. And I'm like, so being groped like every single day doesn't count? It was basically, well, we don't have to, not, what can we do? And then it was just kind of, oh, but I ended up living away from home for a few months. And yeah, shortly after I came home, he walks up to me and sticks his grubby little hands on me once again. Like he just did not learn his lesson. but that was the last time. I think he got grounded for a pretty long time after that, because I think people did, after I was forced to move away from home, like I think people did realize, you know, how unacceptable it was.
Okay, so by his behavior, he sounds like an actual predator.
He's a,
So
he's a
has
fucking
his
human version of a period cramp, man.
so has his okay, so psychologically, if somebody's a predator, they normally continue to be that. Like they don't actually stop unless they go get work, like they go get
Yep.
therapy and they go work on
Amen.
themselves.
They need
Okay.
to out themselves.
So
He's he's a sicko, and like I can't even like, you know, fit 8 years of fucked upness into, you know, a podcast. But yeah, like he is absolutely an absolute, like, you know, I told my partner about this and he's just like, he's an absolute psychopath, absolute monster. He 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 changed. He quit his behavior not because he was sorry what he did, but because he got caught. And you know what the crazy part is? I had a friend that ended up marrying the guy, and she knows what he did. And they have a child together. And I'm like, you could not have made a worse choice. Marrying the dude? Like, no dick is worth that.
so
Like,
is he still a member?
yep. Never got expelled for what he did. Apparently, it was brought up briefly in a members meeting, but he was never put on repentance or expelled or anything was done.
Which them
He,
saying that they didn't need to report that.
yeah,
If there was any, I mean, sexual assault is not just
it's not just
penetration,
rape. Yeah.
right? Sexual assault covers many more things. So
I
I would
talked
think that that would not be accurate at all.
I talked to a therapist after getting out of the church, and I told her I just happened to mention what happened, and I didn't even go to therapy specifically for that, but I did mention it. She immediately interrupted me and was like, you know, I have to call the cops. Either I'm calling Child and Family Services or you can when you get home, but I have to, like, I'm legally bound to report this. And yeah, it's messed up. I did press charges against him. Um, and when he was 19, he ended up moving to Alberta to, we only wonder why, probably did, I think it was, yeah, he ended up moving. Um, and yeah, so I did talk to the police. I did press charges. I reported him. I talked to the police in Ontario. I talked to the police in Steinbach. I talked to the RCMP. But at the end of the day, they said because of lack of proof, my case would not stand. And because of the fact that he did this all under the age of 18, he would be tried as a minor. And so I was just like, okay, well, you know what? I tried, you know, better to, and the whole thing is, even with this whole like, oh, we don't have to report it deal, is like better to try, like what I did. I tried to report it. I did all I could. At the very least, we have a pattern of behavior established, right? You know, we have, you know, there's police records in Ontario, Steinbach, and Alberta with what he's done. At the very least, you know, like it's better to do all you can and fail to have the result you want than to not even try, you know, and wonder what you could have done. It's better an oops than a what if.
Well, another sign of an actual predator, okay, is the lack of remorse.
Oh
You'll
yeah.
find that they have remorse and they
No,
did nothing wrong.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
the
They
mental breakdown,
your sound is glitching.
like him needing to get you to admit that you weren't good, like he yeah, oh my God, I don't even know.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I know this is like really upsetting and, you know,
I
a
think to
lot of
me,
trauma dumping.
yeah,
And I don't make a practice of that, but I think this needs to be talked about. And you know what? Anybody upset that I'm sharing this, obviously just guilty that anybody who could be upset by me sharing this obviously feels guilt, you know? Like I remember when so during the time I was living away from home, my grandma's funeral was, and I went to the funeral, and like people obviously were asking me like, hey, like, what are you up to? Are you working? Are you at school? And I remember I told people I was just like, I'm living away from home because stepbrother did gross stuff to me. And somebody told me when they heard that I had said that, somebody told me, don't tell people that. They're people are gonna think he done something terrible to you. AKA probably it was insinuated that like, oh, people are gonna think he raped you. And I'm like, well, what he did is terrible. And I also remember being told, how would you feel if things you did were being talked about like that? And I'm like, fuck around and find out, you know? If you don't want to be talked about badly, maybe he should have chosen better behavior.
Well,
I think
no, go ahead,
good.
Waylon.
To me, the thing I find most disturbing is the fact that instead of trying to get help, you know, you were talking about them not reporting. Like, I just find it so disturbing that, the the intent is to not have anything happen.
Yep.
Instead of
It's not.
helping someone, improving their situation, improving their mental health, whatever. It's like the best thing we can do here is just make sure no one's looking at this.
Yep. It's not what can we do to help. It's what do we have to do to not get our asses sued.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like I said, even if they would, like I said, obviously I tried to report it. I did all I could. I pressed charges I reported both him and the church for allowing that behavior to continue. Um, Even if obviously no, I never did, I was never able to stand in court. But even if they would have known that it wouldn't have stood in court, just saying, hey, would you feel better, talking to the police about this, regardless of if you'll get a case out of it or not, would that help you feel better?
Well, you are not our first guest that has been sexually abused.
Oh, it's rampant. Like, it's insane.
And the cover up is what's
Yeah,
insane.
it's
Several
absolute bullshit.
several years ago, I had heard of a Mennonite minister who had over the pulpit had just said, watch your children at family functions. This is where a lot of abuse happens, is at family functions. Don't think that they're safe just because they're in a family setting. That is not
Amen.
the truth. But then
Oh, there's
all,
so much incest.
all of this stuff then that happened with Nathaniel Peachy, correct? Or Nathan Peachy, what that man that ended up,
He's a Skinner, right?
yeah, and moved, got,
Oh my God.
they threatened everybody with church punishment, with expelling them if they went through with getting him prosecuted, I guess. And so
What
they
the
ended up
hell?
they got him all the way to a court case, but then they threatened the last one standing that if they did that, they were going to expel them. And so everybody backed down. They didn't even let her write a letter of victimhood, I guess, to the judge. And
Like a victim
the
statement.
judge said, "You're not even remorseful. You know, I
No.
know that you did this stuff, but because nobody came forward, I can't do anything yet. But if I could, like the guy right before him, he sentenced him to 20 years. He said, I'd throw the book at you. But you know what happened? Nathan Beachy, or is that his name? I believe he got to get up and move, and he moved away to another congregation.
Oh, of course.
And I was like all of those people in that congregation, he was a deacon, and nothing was done, and the church protected him. I was like,
holy shit. Well, man, this is probably,
because the thing is it's a child. Okay, it's a child. It is
yeah,
a
it's a
human
kid.
being, and you guys want to protect your religion over a human being,
yeah, yes, amen.
over a pedophile. Send him to prison and let them take care of him like they do.
Yeah, let him be someone's prison wife. No kidding. I have a friend who's in jail, and let me tell you, you're a Skinner and you're in jail, you're gonna get they put you in protection just so other prisoners can't get at you, because even people in jail, someone who's in jail for stealing $20 or for a weed charge, people like get put in jail for dealing pot. Nobody wants to be in jail with a chicken licker. Like nobody. Like even they are like people, yeah. And that's just insane that, yeah, of course he like that this Nathan dude, right? Like he just had to move. Same what my stepbrother did. Just moved because the pressure was because, how dare I be held accountable?
Well, and it's also rumored that where he moved is possibly the staff is actually pedo friendly.
Oh my God, what a terrible term.
Yep. Can you imagine that?
Where did he move to?
I have to get back to you because I know I would name the wrong place.
Get back to me. I might know people.
I'll do that.
The thing I don't understand is how they think that protects, or how they think that fixes their image.
Literally. You know
Like
what?
Yeah.
It might, yeah, it's like, oh, we're scared they were going to look bad admitting that this happened. Well, you look worth defending it.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
all of the children harmed by it.
Yeah. You know what? Especially a child. I'm child free. I'm never having kids. But a child, no child should be hurt by an adult.
None.
Like, you know what? Like, I'm an adult now. I realize that, if I've been in situations where stuff has happened. Like, if I realize that if I go to the bar or go out, walk down a street by myself at night, much as like it shouldn't be happening, the chances of things happening to me in those situations are higher, and I can choose to put myself in those situations, knowing the risks, and in that case, but a child, like as an adult, I'm free to make the choices I make, knowing the risks associated with those choices. And if things happen to me, I'm not going to be the one claiming victimhood. But a child, kids don't choose to be part of adult conflict. Like, no way. Like, you know what? The only reason I don't support a death penalty for pedophiles is because if they know they're going to get killed if they get found out, they probably are going to end up murdering more of their victims. But like, oh yeah, like other than that, like they're worthless. Like, and the crazy part is here in Canada, like we don't even have a public sex offender registry. And that's frustrating because we don't know.
He would meet them in the guise of wanting to have a talk with them. Okay, so if the deacon ever wanted to meet,
yeah, wanting to have a talk with them, yeah, my ass. So you probably wanted to have a lot more with them. What a holy moly.
well, he did have a lot more to obviously with them. But my thing is okay, when I was growing up, if the deacon wanted to meet with me, that would be weird. Like,
Yeah, that's
no.
weird as hell.
So who is letting their children go meet with a deacon?
A grown man. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and
Like,
here's another. I I have had friends who have children that were in the church and they had left and stuff. No, the parents left, but the children were still in the church, and they were still teenagers. The girl and the staff wanted to meet with her, and the staff, my friends, called and said that is perfectly fine. You can meet with her, but I'll be coming along because I do not think it's appropriate for my teenage daughter to be in a meeting with all of y'all without a parent present. And
someone
so
on her side.
they didn't meet with her.
Wow. What the fuck? Yeah. This Nathaniel Peachy situation reminds me. I know someone on Instagram who catches pedophiles and calls the cops on them, who will fake being a minor online. They'll have a conversation and then they get the police called on them. And I'm just like, man, I get someone like that to get this dude out this creep. Like,
It seems like to me, I'm not sure, I'm curious what your take on this would be. It seemed like to me that one of the biggest things they could do is actually provide a sex education.
yes, provide information on, yeah, that, and like obviously sex education in terms of the biological aspect, and also on what consent is.
Yeah.
Like, if it's not a
Even
hell yes, it's a hell no.
right. Even as a boy in that situation, I think you would find a lot less boys becoming predatory
I
if they
think,
actually had some understanding of what was going on.
yeah, and I think also, I think they're a big part of their thing is everybody has a sexuality. I mean, most people, unless you're asexual. And in the church, we are taught to completely suppress that and it's going to go away, not taught how to channel it into healthy ways. And in a society where sexuality is repressed and where women and children are viewed as lesser and inferior, abuse is going to happen. I mean, and also not to be disgusting, but they're also taught it's a sin not to diddle themselves. So like, like, yeah, no, it's I was sexually harassed by my older cousin at my grandma's funeral. At my grandma's funeral. And I just told my mom, I was like, good grief, if he's that desperate, why doesn't he just go whack it in the bathroom? It's like, yeah, would it be inappropriate? But it's also not as weird as sexualizing your younger cousin. Like it's just so many of these, I think, and I think that's, I mean, just like I've read other literature of different religions. And one of the books that I have, I saved the photo because I was gonna the quote. It's like, I think a big thing in the Mennonites is that they're taught these basic impulses like sexuality and pride and these things that everybody has. They're taught that it's evil, and instead of being taught how to channel it healthily, they're taught that it's just wrong and needs to be squashed, and that's never going to happen.
Actually,
Yeah,
that is like a whole real big thing about how religion that are so tight on that and that make you encourage, I guess, basically that to be a hidden thing or a dirty thing, or a, how it creates massive amounts of issue. And if I'm not mistaken, Laverne Friesen is going to have a talk with Starla Taves, and Starla is going to talk about the harm that actually ends up getting done because of when religion is like that. Because, and it is basically a breeding ground for abuse in every which way. And it's not just male on female, it's male on male.
Oh, yeah.
There is a ton of that. And then they also wonder why they're having such a massive issue with people with porn. Well, if this is probably why you've got to remove the stigma off of sex and stop making it a bad thing, and realize that it is a natural happening that God created, and that to go about it in a healthy way. Because as long as you deny it, you are going to have a breeding ground for abuse. And I know that is not their intent. At least I would hope that's not their intent.
And you mentioned the porn thing. Is this a big problem? And I left the church, I feel like, at an age where I wasn't really aware of that. Is that a major issue?
Is what a major issue?
You just mentioned like the porn issue being a big issue.
Yes. It has come to the point where now they don't even necessarily expel for it anymore. If you can find forgiveness, like they'll give you a grace period or whatever, and if you can find forgiveness in that time and have an experience, they won't even bring it up to the congregation anymore. That is how rampant it became.
Wow. You know what? I think I remember this being brought. Yeah, the thing that you mentioned. Interesting.
Okay. So there is a lot more to the story, but I'm just going to say this part. So my husband's grandfather was a kind of a big deal, I think, back in his day. He's dead now. Anyways, he was for sex education. He wanted there to be sex education in the church because of the problems it was creating. And I guess back in the day, a lot of people stayed at her parents' house for the first night. And it was to discourage basically raping from occurring. From the new husband raping the new wife.
What the marital rape? Yes, people are that. I wonder how much of that happens. That is just absolutely messed up. Yeah, I definitely had issues too with the whole abuse thing. Yeah. This whole thing about, squashing sexuality. I have a quote on my phone that I actually was gonna share. It's from a singer who is a Satanist. And his quote is, "Christianity's war against the devil has always been a fight against man's most natural instincts for sex, for violence, for self-gratification, and a denial of man's membership in the animal kingdom. The idea of heaven is just Christianity's way of creating a hell on earth."
Yes. My sister was saying today, I think she's like, she goes, something to do with schooling, and she read the Satanist something creed, I think, or like there's seven
tenets. Yeah, yes, I have actually.
And she's like, I want to send this to mom, and I want to tell her, look, this is pretty much what all religions stand on.
Yeah.
So the Satanists are no different than your religion that you're standing on.
Yeah, I have researched it since I was 17, and am a member of the Satanic Temple, and yeah, we it's just do no harm but take no shit. Yeah, I definitely, yeah, it's it's about it's about instead of and the reason, like, Satanists don't even believe in there's obviously like theistic Satanists who do believe in like the devil as a deity, but the majority of Satanism is atheistic. And their belief is that these basic human instincts, which are viewed like as of the devil, they aren't devilish unless you use them to hurt. They aren't bad. They aren't evil unless you use them to hurt other people. Like things like pride and lust. I actually explained this to somebody on Instagram, and I said, they're like, something like envy, like, your neighbor might get a new car and you get jealous. There's nothing wrong with that unless you treat your neighbor like shit. Maybe that jealousy motivates you to, maybe you work harder so you can get a new vehicle too. Things like, pride. It's okay to have pride. We all have it. If it motivates you to be a better person, like pride in doing a good job at work or things like that, or things like lust, it's like, as long as it's consensual, like these things aren't evil unless you use them to hurt other people. And
well, go on.
Yeah, I should get my satanic Bible out and see if but yeah, it's just, and the thing is, and this is another thing, like the whole like, the pride and whatnot. These Mennonites, they're claiming, I think that I noticed as somebody who's both been in the Mennonites and outside of the Mennonites, if they claim that they dress the way they do to be humble and they're modest, but like they are more. When I was in the Mennonites, there was more pressure to follow their silly trends that they made up than I've ever noticed out here. I've never felt pressure to follow a trend or anything like I did in the church. And modest, yeah, maybe their clothes are like cover them, but like, what about their huge fancy houses? I noticed there's more trends, there's more pressure, there's more desire to look good in the church than I've ever seen out of it. Nobody of my friend group, when I was in the church, there was people that were known as, or even congregations that were known as being cool and whatnot because of how they looked, how they dressed, people, families, congregations. And now in my friend group, nobody in my friend group is noted as being cooler. Yeah, maybe there's people, I mean, like, I'm noted for, having colorful hair and dressing like a goth stripper, but like, I'm not ever like, yeah, people maybe have their styles and whatnot, but nobody is held above anybody for how their house looks or for their clothing or for, there's even like before going out, there's no pressure to have to dress up and look a certain way. Like, they have more pride in that church than I've ever seen outside of it.
Yeah. And, I was speaking to a lady who is a member, and her daughter, she was talking about her daughter who is married with children. And she says my daughter is wanting to leave because she cannot handle the social pressures of keeping up. And I just talked to her about that because I actually have another friend who had a mental breakdown over all of that. And I'm like, it's
holy
a
shit.
real thing.
Wow. Yeah, like, it's just, there's so much pressure, and like, it's just crazy. Like, people might they look at someone like me who has tattoos and piercings and think that I'm full of pride about my looks and I'm evil because I'm so prideful. Well, I go to the tattoo parlor, spend 2 or 3 hours, and I come out with something that's on me for the rest of my life that I don't have to keep up every day. But yeah, they're the ones who have to, have full face and outfit and everything ready before every single time they go out. That's a lot more pride than just me going and getting stabbed in the face or wherever in the body. Like, maybe I spend an hour or two every other month dyeing my hair or something. Well, they have to, like, every single time they go in public. And meanwhile, I'm schluffing around in my pajamas and slippers. I don't think I'm the prideful one here.
And words, the meaning or no, well, the connotation stuff that goes with words that's not actually even what it is. Okay, because we were talking about Satanists and all that and stuff, but like
Mhm.
even pagan, we were always taught that pagan, right? That's just, I mean, oh, that's terrible,
Horrible.
that's terrible, that's terrible.
Mhm.
But the truth of the matter is someone that is pagan, they see God in everything, in the grass, the trees, the
Amen.
sky, like the moon, the stars. Like they see God in everything. So that was just created by religion somewheres to say, oh, how they're terrible, they're bad. I'm sorry. Why is seeing God in everything bad?
I mean,
So
what better? I've always said, what better way to serve a God than to show kindness to everything around you? You know.
yes, yes, absolutely. But no, the pride, but you could never, ever, ever get them to understand the bondage they are in because of their pride.
Mm-hmm. I remember before, like especially if it would be like weddings or something where there would be multiple youth groups, I would feel sick beforehand because I just felt ugly and I knew I was never keeping up. And now, like I go hang out with anybody and everybody, and I don't feel any of that. I have no well, I still struggle with a little bit of anxiety, but nothing compared to what was in the church. Because the people that, you know, the people that are around me, and now I can pick and choose who's around me. And if somebody's a judgy cunt, then I just don't hang out with them. Whereas in those situations, you're forced to just hang out with people, and there's pretty much just you just have to keep up. Like you can't pick and choose your circle, so you just have to keep up with the one you're forced into.
That's really interesting. I hadn't actually thought of that before, that as a Mennonite you don't pick your social group at all. You're just thrown
I mean,
into
you.
it and you have to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I hadn't thought of that.
I used to joke that, um, and it wasn't a joke, it was honest to God the truth, but I would change more times getting ready to go to a Mennonite function than I ever did for a first date, ever.
Amen. I spent more time getting ready. It's like,
Oh,
are you kidding me? I spent more time getting ready to, yeah, like you said, change more times getting ready to go to church or a youth function than I do now to go shake my tits at the bar. Like, it's insane. Like, it really is insane. There's so much pressure, and people are so known by their looks and what type of houses they have and what type of car they drive. And just their pride is not. I'm sorry, I'm eating pizza. I got really shaky all of a sudden, so I had to go get some food. Their pride, they think that their lifestyle eliminates pride, but it just channels it into their own little circle. It's just like, oh, the things we have pride in are holier than the things you have pride in. Like, it's absolutely insane. And like I say, the friend group that I hang out with now, nobody is known for, how they look or any of that. Like, yeah, I have friends that I know like certain things, but the only time that affects how I interact with them is if I'm in town and see something they like and buy it for them. Nobody's known as cooler or less cool for how they dress. I like no way. Like I have a friend who's the most basic blonde there ever was, no tattoos or piercings, and pretty much the opposite sense of style as I do. And then there's me, like nobody's held up in higher regard. It's different. It's not viewed as less or more. But in the Mennonites, it's just like you see them, they have massive ass houses. Like they have huge houses and fancy vehicles, like the amount of even like young people that are modifying their cars to, maybe not even necessarily on the outside, but like on, under the hood. Like it's pride, and it's just going different places. It's not eliminated. There's more pride in like I feel like you go into like a churchyard, you go into like a church yard Sunday morning, and there's more fancy vehicles and you see the youth coming out of church, they're dressed fancier, their vehicles are fancier, they go home to a fancier house than me and my friends hanging out on a any given day.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Like, I am just ranting away. Sorry if I talk too much. Like, just tell me to shut up. But like, man,
No, this is what we're looking for.
like they just need to be called on their shit. And you know what? Like, I can guarantee you, somehow, I'm sure that somehow there's going to be word of me talking on here is going to get out to church people, and I'm sure I'll get some very angry little messages. And I'm just like, you know what? Should have played a different part in your story if you'd have wanted me to speak better, you know?
Okay. So with that being said, how do you think that they can take a look more at, or if that there is somebody listening to this podcast that is questioning where they're at, like what would you have to say to them?
Honestly, in terms of like the church itself, I don't really care what they do, because you know what? That's on them. That's their life. But somebody who's questioning getting out, I guess it would depend on what part they were questioning, where I would come at them from, you know? And like, I think if they're questioning the church's word as being like all these filthy little rules the church comes up with, do you think if there's a God, he actually cares what we're doing as long as we're not hurting other people? I doubt it.
Right. Like the things that they make, like they're, I don't know. I just wish they could see that there is freedom.
Like, I got crapped on more for kissing a girl than my stepbrother did for, molesting me. And my kissing the girl was fully consensual.
Except for I hear now that they actually have an LG group.
What?
Guys, I'm sorry, I'm serious. Somebody told me that there is and I can double check, but that there is a committee that has been created for anyone that is gay
Or lesbian
in the church, that have chosen to stay in the church and to apparently not act on it. I don't know.
I was going to say.
They even said that they have retreats.
Are these like
therapy?
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's awful.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Fuck that.
Because
I remember them saying they supported conversion therapy one time at a members meeting, and that was a moment where I was just like, all right, I'm out.
I'll have to ask if that's what it is, conversion therapy, because they just said retreats, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's like going from the pot to the fire.
That's right? It's like real life grinder.
But not if it's conversion therapy, then it's not.
No. Yeah, I feel like any relation they would have with being gay or lesbian or trans, I feel like it would, yeah, like you said, it would be about how to refrain from practicing it, not realizing that, you know what, who cares? Like, as long as nobody's being hurt. Like, right. Yeah.
Why don't we make our focus on making sure that it's consensual, and instead of
who it's with, or if it's within the bounds of marriage, or it's like, yeah, no, I do not need someone in a suit and tie to tell me, I do not need to be married. I've been common law for 2.5 years, and it's like, I do not need some minister to give me their blessing to do the binky boinky, especially with the amount of marital rape. Marriage is not the solution to whatever, like, they need to teach about consent and about healthy practices, not about, oh, don't do it before you're married. Like, no way.
Yeah. I don't have all the answers, and I'm glad that I'm not in a position where I need to judge or help them correct where they're at. But
Amen. I'm just like, you know what? They can make their mistakes.
as long as I don't have to fix them.
Exactly. Yeah, I think yeah. Obviously, you know, for anyone who's questioning and wants to get out, like I want to help those people, but the people that are just set in their ways, nah, they ain't gonna stuff themselves.
No, and that's not what this is about. It's for those that have, that have left or that are even questioning and that are looking, it's to say, hey, we have made it. And this is where we're at. And it sounds like you're still dealing with a lot of pain and a lot of hurt from what was done, and that you were not validated in what was being done to you. It was diminished. It was, swept under the rug. It was like, oh, well, it wasn't right, so you're perfectly fine. So
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I can realize the wrongness of it, but I don't have to. I can realize that portion of my life was ruined, but it doesn't ruin my life now. Like, I'm not a victim. Yes. The victims are still in that church with God knows what happening to them. I am not here I'm here to bring awareness, not to raise pity. And that is not, and absolutely. Like I say, I am not the bad things that have happened. I'm not a victim. I'm not a poor me. No way. Like, I got out of that shit. And,
so do you have a relationship with your parents now?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's just they realized, that they handled it wrong. I realized that, they did as I like to believe that everyone is doing the best they can with what they know, instead of believing that people have malicious intent. The person that I believe had the malicious intent was my stepbrother, not my parents. Like, I think, and like, they've expressed, regret over it. I've told them, obviously, I'm sorry if I handled things wrong. How I left the church actually was, I had told the pastor of the church that I wanted to leave and that I'd been thinking about it for quite a while. And he just kind of brushed it off. And I went on a trip shortly after to Steinbach, and I just never went back. Just peaced out. And obviously, even like that, like, my leaving was not ideal, and I can realize, and I've apologized to my parents for the harm it did, because obviously they were affected by it, even if it wasn't about them. And I think, like, it's just a matter with my folks, it's a matter of mutual respect. We've talked about, like, when they come to my house, they're subject to what goes on here. They can't change it. They can't control it. If they're uncomfy, they can leave. And the same as at their place, how I would be. And if there's anything we have questions about, we ask each other and be truthful. And it's better to just be straight up and ask how things are going to be, and then just not attend those events or things if you're uncomfy, than attending them and having trouble,
Right. Well, that sounds like a really good relationship.
Oh, for sure.
Very open. That's all.
Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. It's a mutual respect, as adults to another adult.
Does your partner get along with them?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's good.
I can't speak on his thoughts about everything, obviously, because that's his opinion to share. But we can realize that we can still enjoy the time we spend with them without agreeing with everything they do or say.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes I think that's almost more significant for a partner to accept, we grew up with the shit. And so sometimes it's almost harder for the partner to accept that those people did this thing to us. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think
I
I
agree.
think it's really positive if our partners can get along with our family.
Yeah, I definitely remember like one time before I left for work, I guess I told some of my partner some of the stuff about my stepbrother. It was stuff that I just kind of remembered like right then. And I was just like, oh yeah, this happened. And then I just went off to work and forgot about it. And meanwhile, he was just like, it just kind of stuck in his mind. And um, I mean, you know what? To be fair, if he would never want to see my stepbrother again, I would fully support that because I can't imagine seeing the man that molested your wife, you know?
Yeah.
If I knew anybody that, laid a hand on my partner without their consent, especially as a child, yeah, I'd stick my fingers in their eyes as hard as I could. Like obviously, yeah, I can't do anything illegal, but if there wasn't restrictions on what you can do to people like that, like they'd be dead.
Throughout a lot of this, I've been thinking about how that works, not just the Holdeman Church, but most of religion, especially Islamic and Christian religions. It's so interesting that they take something like sexuality and put it into a box that they control. I was just
Yep.
thinking, the best way to control somebody is to take something that they can't deny and then say you're evil for this thing and we have the
Mm-hmm.
fix. I mean, I was
Too.
thinking, what if they said enjoying food is sinful? Well, then and to me, that's no different. We get hungry every day. We also have these other drives that never go away. They never.
Exactly. I mean, send me to hell with a bowl of craft dinner in my hand.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think that is the main way to control people is to take these natural human instincts and villainize them and preach that this certain organization has the cure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you've ever read I think his name is I forget what the name is. Stephen Hassan, the BITE like model of authoritarian control.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. I know
Holdeman
who that
Church
is.
ticks almost all those boxes. It needs to be like things like like a bunch of things. It needs to be not you cannot do this because this bad thing is going to happen. It needs to be, hey, if you're going to do this, this is how to do it safely. Like I remember my parents once telling me like, which I really appreciate them, trying to educate me on about like date rape, drugs being slipped into drinks, right? And there, would have been like, well, just don't drink because this can happen, instead of like, hey, if you go out drinking, know that this can happen and this is how to, tell if somebody's done it or how to avoid it. Or anything, like or if you're going to be sexually active, here's how to avoid, catching an STD, getting pregnant. If you're going to be doing recreational drugs, here's how to avoid, overdosing on something. Just
Yeah.
anything, if you're going to go out, like partying, this is how to stay safe, like yeah.
Okay. So yes. So we one of our other guests we were talking about it, and she was talking about it might have been before we started recording, but anemic youth, and that all of these rules that are in place with no education end up making anemic people because you have these rules, so they're following the rules, but they're never understanding why you don't do it. So then when I left the church, I was 22, but I had friends, I made friends, things like that. And my one friend, she wasn't married, and she, had a boyfriend and all this. And like I was always so just fascinated with her and then others in that church youth group that because I was like, well, I mean, okay, so everybody's sleeping with everybody, right? And she's like, no. And I'm like, well, but you don't get in trouble. And she's like, well, of course you don't get in trouble with the church. She says, but that's still a choice that you need to make on a different level. So, like, I needed to wrap my whole mind around the fact that they weren't doing this because they were going to get in trouble, which is what we all did, right? It's
Mhm.
they weren't doing this because they had been taught fundamentals of what they, who they were as people and who they were, I guess, as divine beings, and then making those choices based on all of that. And so that is where we were never taught that stuff. You don't not sleep with
Yeah.
somebody because of the energy exchange that's going to happen or this or that or whatever. It's you don't do it because the church says you don't do it because it's wrong because you're going to get expelled. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so it
It's
takes
not,
that autonomy away from everybody and ends
and
up
even,
making them this rule follower, so law abiding
and
Christians.
it's, and yeah, even like in terms of something like promiscuity, it's not taught like, here are the risks. It's taught just, oh, don't do it. But it needs to be taught. Things like that need to be taught, that people need to be taught the risks, but they need to be taught how to do it safely if they continue to do it, if they choose to do it. And um another thing I wonder about, this is probably really like TMI, but because of the abuse from my stepbrother, actually, I couldn't have penetrated sex for like years. And I wonder how many people, the whole like marital rape, like how many people are suffering from that, because I had it like, you know, like you wonder how many. It's just like, especially with the whole like before, like, no doing it before marriage. It's like before marriage you're not even supposed to look at someone, and then after marriage you're just, and in like one day is the only difference it is, and then you're supposed to just take a dick,
That's
like.
what my sister said. She got married in the church, and she said, we went from we weren't couldn't even hold hands to all of a
Mhm.
sudden you can do it all. She said, like, there was no halfway point, no easing into it, none of that courtship. She said that I
Mhm.
think would be very, very instrumental in introducing.
Yeah,
Well,
it's there's, I mean, there, yeah, I've definitely wondered how prevalent that is. Just how much, yeah, yeah, it's makes you wonder. Just, yeah, like once you're married, all bets are off pretty much.
well, what's insane is like from a guy's standpoint, you're guilted tremendously if you masturbate, but then, like you said, in one day, suddenly you've went from nothing to a naked person with you. You think,
Yeah.
if the stuff happened organically, you you hold hands and you kiss and you move along and you on and on, and by the time you get to that point, everybody is much more ready. It's just recipe for disaster. Every one of them,
There,
it seems like, unless maybe they weren't such proper. I don't know.
getting a little bit of it before the marriage. Yeah, and I mean, with women, there is a it's very common in women who've experienced sexual trauma. It's a condition called vaginismus, and it's essentially you just can't get penetrated because the muscles down there tighten up, and you can't get anything in there. Some people can't even like use a tampon, and you wonder like how, because women are taught that sex is to be in the church. They're taught to be fear. It's taught to be feared and whatnot, right? Like you wonder how many women have that and how many husbands just get frustrated because of it and just jam it in. And then it just is a never ending cycle because, you know, they, these women have this condition. Like you wonder how many of them have it because it's a condition rooted largely in anxiety and fear. And I think almost, and because the discussions around sex with, for a lot of girls, it's just viewed as something that's a little bit scary and, you know, makes you wonder if that contributes to a larger part of if that, and then they get married and they're supposed to do it and they can't, and then there becomes the issue of marital rape, and because of the trauma that causes, the condition doesn't improve, and it's just a never-ending cycle. You know, like, you wonder how much of that happens. Obviously, I don't have any statistics, but
Even
like,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, makes you wonder.
Even the psychology of that, like you said, it's feared and maybe abhorred or whatever before marriage. I cannot understand how anyone can be expected to go from fearing and abstaining with every ounce of their being to then suddenly, especially I feel like women get so much shame, you know. Well, how did you dress? Well, your dresses
Oh
are
my God.
too provocative, and their
Revealing.
skirts are too short, and then suddenly from Saturday night to Sunday night, they have to go from thinking every bit of sexuality is awful to now you have to do it.
No, you have to put
Just
out.
that psychological flip flop there is just
Yeah. Yeah, and like, even just, I mean, yeah, like, even, and just like, not even like in terms of sexuality, not even with others, but in terms of, you know, like you say, like, you're not allowed to like whack off, you know? Like, I didn't even know what that, I don't even think I knew what that was. I probably knew that people probably did it, but I had no clue how or what, you know? Like, it's just, you aren't even allowed to explore yourself beforehand, never mind any other people. Like that
I
was
have a
just like,
friend. I have a friend who she said growing up that her mom made sure they knew, her and her brother, that masturbating was one of the biggest sins they could commit.
holy shit.
As an
Wow.
adult, she's got some sexual trauma.
Yeah, it's like, it literally hurts nobody. It's like, yeah, I mean, I remember one time I got asked, do you ever look at yourself in the mirror when you're naked? And I was like, of course I do. I'm not, it's like, this is the least saggy my tits will ever be. Let me enjoy it. Like, yeah, just like, you're not encouraged to, you know, even connect with yourself, never mind other people. Like, yeah, no. Like, it's just, I don't know. This actually kind of reminds me, when I was a really little kid, we had like encyclopedias, and there was like some anatomy photo. I don't remember one time there was a picture of, I remember I very like, obviously I was old enough to know that it was something that was kind of forbidden, and I found it funny. I remember like I pointed out like a penis to my family, and like I just thought it was hilarious, and they would laugh, and I was just like banned from the bookshelf for like so long after that. I'm like, geez, like, not a sin.
you know, I've spoken to several people who the encyclopedia was their
Like,
lifeline.
sex ed. Oh yeah.
Oh
Oh yeah.
man.
I definitely remember like going to the library and like looking at stuff of that nature, and just being like, oh my God. Like, I was like, oh, the more you know, I guess. Oh
Wow.
yeah. Definitely cheers to the World Book for educating us
Yeah.
Mennonite kids.
You know,
Yeah,
talking about, go ahead.
definitely remember there was one that was like the human anatomy, and it was like clear pages, so there was different layers. Like, one was like the blood vessels, and one, I definitely remember my being told there was, I remember that being taboo for some reason. I'm like, I don't know. God forbid our parents catch us looking at a boobie.
Yeah, I was just Googling sex education correlating with teen pregnancy, and I find that so fascinating because they all say, "Oh, don't teach them anything because then they're going to want to do
They're
it."
gonna,
And it's
they'll,
so interesting. The more education you give, the higher the age is
less-
before you get teen pregnancies.
Yup, agreed. The less, and it just goes to prove you there's no stopping people from doing it. There's just educating them to do it safely. Yeah, I definitely yeah. It's I don't really, yeah, it was, I definitely remember, like, as soon as I got out of the church, definitely, you know, there was a lot to learn. I remember, like, one of the first things I did, like, after leaving the church, I mean, after I came to Winnipeg, my first stop when I, like, driving away from the airport was at a pot shop, and then, like, I think a few days after that, I, like, went to a strip club. I was just like, I gotta get immersed in this taboo culture.
Well, I've been enjoying this a lot. Is there something you would like to, or you feel like you would really like to get out yet or talk about?
Not much. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to ask me?
I thought there was, but I think it slipped my mind. Oh, I guess you actually answered it. I was going to ask you kind of where your beliefs fall now, but we talked about that.
Yeah, I'm just, I think at the end of the day, live a good life. If there is a God and you go to heaven, cool. If there isn't a God and you just end up not going anywhere, well, you lived a good life. Who cares? And
Yeah.
if there is a God and he's still going to shit on you despite you doing the best you could, then he's not worth serving. I personally don't adhere to any belief system. I think you can draw inspiration from everything, and you can draw inspiration from everything. And I think it's impossible to label. I think, like, even the church, you know, they try and put everyone in a box, but it's like everybody has there can be a million people serving a God, and they can all be serving him different ways, and none of those ways are wrong. You can take inspiration from everything. You don't have to, like, limit yourself to any religion, you know, like I have, you know, lots of different, you know, read a lot of different literature from different beliefs. It's just, you know, whatever helps people get through life. I think we're all just trying to make a method out of the madness, and as long as it's helping us get through life and we're not using it to hurt other people,
Yeah, I like that.
I think in terms of, like, back to the whole, like, you know, these Mennonites and just, like, some of the stuff, like the abuse, where they're focusing more on consensual relationships than abusers and stuff like that. Like, fight the real enemy for real. Like, it just needs to be changed. Like, that discussion needs to be completely just reworked.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. Chocolate bar decided to have a return policy.
I don't know why I just noticed your very custom earbud holder there.
Yes. Because it was banging against the earbud, so I was just like, yeah.
Flip it through.
When my ears were smaller, when they were smaller, I could just store my earbuds in my piercings, but now they're bigger and they would fall out. But
yeah,
I think when they were at about, like, 10 millimeters, I could just put my earbuds in there and have them in the whole evening. But now they would definitely get lost.
Well, Amanda, do you have anything else to add to? I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. You know, okay, so, like, my takeaway, I think, for all of this is that just be, you know, sexual abuse happens in all forms, in all places, in the most unlikely places. Like, see something, say something. Don't keep your silence, because if you keep your silence, then you are part of the problem.
Yes, you can. It's, if you remain neutral, you are siding with the oppressor.
Yes. You know, and be on the lookout. Understand that it is a lot more prevalent in the Holdeman Mennonite Church today than anybody wants to publicly admit.
Oh yeah, they'll never admit it. They think by admitting it makes them look bad, but it makes them look worse to hide it.
Exactly, because they're all guilty. So keep an eye out
Absolutely.
for it. Watch your children. Warn your friends that have children. Don't think that it's okay, that it's safe to let everybody run into the parking lot, or all the kids to stay in the dark parking lot after church and play, and that they're perfectly fine. Nothing's going to happen. Yes, it is. Yes, it can. Not that yes, it is, but yes, it can. That is the perfect breeding ground for that stuff. And then you don't think predators are watching and know that that's what happens? Is that, these children get to go play out by themselves after a church deal?
They're out, yeah, they're looking out for that. Like, a predator will take, like, from obviously my upbringing with one, like, it will take anything. And another thing I want to add is don't protect the reputations of predators. Don't be afraid to destroy people's lives over crimes they chose to commit. Like, speak the fuck up, out them, because you know what? Being outed, being publicly shamed, that is a lot of times more effective than just a fine or a few nights in jail. Like,
yeah,
absolutely. There's nothing. There are crimes that people do that they do out of survival. They can steal to feed their family. There's cases of murder in self-defense. There's people that have trafficked drugs because they've needed money to keep a roof over their heads. But abuse and that stuff, nobody ever forces someone to do that to another person. Nobody's survival ever hinges on treating anybody else like that. And that is a choice people make out of their own free will, out of the rottenness of their hearts, and they deserve to be outed.
And no child
100%
deserves this.
Absolutely not. No child, no adult, nobody. Like, nobody. And the thing, and like how we mentioned these abusers, they just move to another congregation, Like, all I've got to say is if you live in Dewberry, Alberta, watch your kids. Like, it's easier to run than to take responsibility. And people, that is the sign of a true predator, is that instead of owning up to what they've done, they will claim victimhood in every situation.
I was just thinking how powerful it could be if. Can you all see my screen flickering?
A little bit,
That's
yeah.
really weird. I don't know what it's doing.
Yes.
Anyway, I was just thinking about how powerful it would be if the church would say, hey, predator, we're not going to accept this. Like,
No.
That one of the worst things to do is to do exactly this and hide it. If they became part of the solution, it would just be so much better.
And like when I outed my abuser and was told, oh, how do you think he feels, having people talk about those things he did? Well, if you didn't feel bad about, if people talking about the things you do makes you feel bad, you're obviously guilty. Because I do a lot of things.
Me for 8 years and not feel bad, then maybe it's time people talk about you.
And also, it's like, if the things you do you don't really feel bad about, I do a lot of things that I probably get talked about and hold them in circles. But do I give a shit? No, because I don't care. Enjoy the things. I feel no guilt in doing them. It's only the people these abusers, the reason they feel, oh, think of his feelings. Well, you know what? Maybe he should have thought of mine, You say, oh, he's too young to have his life ruined. Well, maybe he should have thought of that before he tried to ruin mine when I was even younger. Like I say, we got to normalize destroying these people's lives over things they chose to do out of their own free will, under no duress, under no conditions needed for their survival. They just chose to be pieces of shit, and you can't even. And you know what? It's like nothing excuses it. Even I've been blackout drunk and I've never laid hands on another person without asking first. It's never an excuse. nothing, no mental condition I have, no drug I've done, nothing. I've never ever touched another person in so much as even a hug or a handshake without asking them first. Like, people do that because they want to, not because they can't help it or because they have to. Nothing drives a person to do those things, to choose those actions, other than just their own shittiness. And like you said, it's like they will always have this system just helping them escape from their own actions. It's just like this shitty underground railroad, but for disgusting people. It's just it's like you say, it's just such a, like you mentioned, other people on the podcast, talking about just how prevalent that is. Just a constant undercurrent of abuse that is never gonna be dealt with. None of those people are ever gonna, they're always just gonna find somewhere else to run to. And I mean, I got out, right? But when it comes to kids, they can't, like, yeah.
Well, I have really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. I
and
enjoyed
I
being on here. I
really want to
apologize if
thank
I
you.
said anything inappropriate.
I want to thank you for being open and just sharing everything you did. That's
Oh yeah, I have no shame. Like, I hide nothing. Like, I can acknowledge that maybe some of the actions I haven't always been, obviously I'm human and I fuck up, right? But like, I can acknowledge I wasn't perfect, but I also have no guilt over anything I've done, unlike these people.
yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to shut off the recording then.
All right.
Thank you, and yeah, just thanks for all of it.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you for listening. It is an honor to connect with our guests, and we wish the best for them as well as our listeners. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. Our People can be found on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are interested in sharing your story, please contact us at ourpeoplepodcastteam@gmail.com. Thank you.